how the royal family needed something. There was just a feeling in the country that they needed to give something. And then, of course, before William arrived in Riyadh, he and the princess made a statement.
A live TV bombshell has shaken Britain. Royal author Andrew Lowney has publicly declared Charles must go, urging the king to abdicate as the Andrew Epstein scandal explodes. Within minutes, the demand ignites national outrage, political debate, and a crisis the palace can no longer contain. Charles must go. The Live TV line that was crossed. The crisis begins when royal biographer Andrew Lowney appears on a primetime Talk TV panel and delivers a line that shocks even seasoned commentators. Looking directly into camera, he says that King Charles III should consider stepping aside for the survival of the monarchy itself. Clips of the broadcast spread within minutes, stamped with captions like "Charles must go" and "No king above the law." The message, once confined to fringe groups, suddenly dominates national conversation. Lowney links his argument to the growing fallout around Prince Andrew, who is under renewed investigation following the release of extensive Epstein-related documents in the United States. He says the public is demanding answers, and that the key questions now reach far beyond one royal figure. Who knew what, when, and why were warnings ignored? His tone is calm, but the implication is seismic, suggesting that both Elizabeth II and Charles III may have mishandled concerns raised over many years. Inside Buckingham Palace, officials are described by reporters as deeply alarmed. Not because a critic spoke, but because the critic is a historian known for years of archive work, FOI battles, and published research on the monarchy. When someone with that background questions the crown's survival, the moment carries weight. A commentator on Sky News puts it bluntly, "This is the first time a mainstream royal historian has said Charles may need to fall on his sword." As the clip continues to spread, the debate intensifies. Supporters say Lowney voiced what many now whisper privately. Opponents accuse him of destabilizing the institution during a difficult moment, but for the first time in decades, the possibility of abdication moves from hypothetical to national discussion. And while the broadcast rattled the palace, the streets delivered an even sharper blow, one that cameras captured from every angle. Hecklers at the gates. Public confrontations break the spell. During walkabouts in Lichfield and later at Clitheroe Station, a single voice pierces the quiet crowd. A man shouts a question that instantly goes viral. "How long did you know about Andrew and Epstein?" Security moves quickly, and surrounding well-wishers chant, "God save the king." But the moment is recorded from multiple phones. For the first time, King Charles III is confronted publicly, not about politics or policy, but about what he may have known behind palace walls. The scene repeats weeks later in Fallin, Scotland, this time directed at Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. The same question, shouted with the same anger, shows that the controversy is no longer contained to the older generation of the monarchy. Commentators note how unusual it is for William and Catherine, normally insulated by strong public support, to face that level of confrontation. One analyst observes, "When questions jump from the king to the heir, it signals an institutional crisis, not a personal one." Social media stitches the heckling clips with archive footage of Prince Andrew's Newsnight interview and images from Epstein's legal cases, creating a narrative that the monarchy is being boxed in by unanswered questions. Public relations experts warn that in the smartphone era, a single shouted question can undo months of carefully curated messaging. A former palace advisor comments, "Once these confrontations begin, you can't roll them back. They set the tone." The heckles reveal something deeper than anger. They expose a shift in public confidence. The monarchy, once buffered by deference, now faces direct challenge in open air, with cameras rolling and crowds watching. But this wave of confrontation was only the beginning. The next shock would test the monarchy in a way Britain had not seen for centuries. The arrest. Dawn raid on a fallen prince. Just after sunrise on the 19th of February 2026, unmarked police vehicles turn into the Sandringham estate. Within minutes, officers from Thames Valley Police arrive at the private residence of Prince Andrew. It is his 66th birthday. According to official statements, Andrew is arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, connected to his period as the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment. Footage shows him being escorted to a police car in silence. One commentator later says, "This is the day the monarchy crossed a line it never imagined." At the same time, coordinated searches take place at properties in Norfolk and Berkshire, including areas of Royal Lodge, signaling that investigators are treating royal-linked spaces as potential evidence sites, not protected sanctuaries. This is unprecedented in modern royal history. The renewed investigation follows the massive release of Epstein-related documents, which contain references linking Andrew's name to emails, travel logs, and communications from the period he served as a senior trade envoy. Officials stress that these materials require careful review, but the public impact is immediate. After 11 hours of questioning at Aylsham Police Station, Andrew is released under investigation. The image of him leaving, shoulders slumped, eyes down, flashes across global broadcasts. Reporters describe the moment as the monarchy's most severe credibility test since the 1936 abdication crisis. A constitutional historian remarks, "This isn't just a family scandal, it's an institutional shockwave." For the first time in centuries, the British public watches a close relative of the reigning monarch face arrest procedures under civilian law. But the arrest didn't come out of nowhere. It followed years of warnings, many ignored, many buried, and many now resurfacing in the harsh light of public scrutiny. 15 years of warnings, from Epstein, friendships, to FOI blockades. Andrew's ties to Jeffrey Epstein began long before the public realized. Though Andrew claimed they met in 1999, investigators and reporters, including Andrew Lowney, point to indications the relationship started earlier. For years, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson maintained social and financial contact with Epstein, even after his 2008 conviction. This was not a brief friendship, Lowney says in interviews. It was a pattern. The breaking point came in 2019, when Andrew sat for the BBC Newsnight interview. His comments about a Pizza Express alibi, his claim that he could not sweat, and his insistence that he had no recollection of meeting Virginia Giuffre turned the attempt at damage control into a global disaster. Public confidence collapsed, and Andrew stepped back from duties, later losing military roles and patronages. By 2022, Andrew reached a substantial financial settlement with Giuffre in the United States. Though the agreement included no admission of liability, the payment fueled public belief that the palace was attempting to bury a deeper issue. Meanwhile, Lowney spent years filing Freedom of Information requests about Andrew's decade as a trade envoy. Time and again, he received replies stating that key documents would remain sealed until 2065, far beyond the lifespan of most witnesses. The refusal amplified suspicions that both Whitehall and the palace were shielding sensitive material. As Lowney put it, files don't get locked for 40 years by accident. The release of Epstein-related documents in the United States added new layers: emails, travel overlaps, and references to government briefings. Suddenly, critics argued this was no longer about a reckless friendship, but about years of unanswered concerns and institutional inaction. With the warnings laid bare, investigators turned to one of the most contentious questions of all: what Andrew actually did during his years as a high-profile envoy for the British government. Trade envoy or security risk? Andrew's high-flying years re-examined. Between 2001 and 2011, Prince Andrew served as Britain's special representative for international trade and investment, a role meant to promote UK business abroad. His frequent trips earned him the nickname Air Miles Andy, as public records show extensive travel funded by taxpayers. Officials later described this period as one where boundaries between official duties and private interests often appeared blurred. During these years, Andrew formed ties with several controversial figures, including businessmen in Azerbaijan, contacts in Libya, and associates such as financier David Rowland. Reports indicate that these relationships raised concerns inside government circles, with some diplomats describing discomfort over meetings where socializing blended with state business. A former official said, "You never quite knew where the trade mission ended and the private network began." After the release of extensive Epstein-related documents in the United States, investigators began reassessing Andrew's trade envoy communications. Some documents reportedly contain email references and forwarded material linked to his official role. Police emphasized that these records must be evaluated carefully and that no conclusions can be drawn without full review. Still, their inclusion in the investigation underscored the seriousness of the questions being asked. Intelligence officials have also expressed, in past reporting, concerns about Andrew's proximity to individuals connected to China, including businessman Chris Yang, sometimes referred to as H6. Although no wrongdoing was proven, these associations led some insiders to describe Andrew as a potential vulnerability, a senior figure who might be targeted for influence. Diplomatic staff recalled moments when glamour, hospitality, and unofficial guests overshadowed mission goals. As one civil servant put it, "It created situations where we felt we were enabling behavior we couldn't control." But scrutiny of Andrew's public career soon expanded into scrutiny of his private life, specifically what insiders claimed was happening behind palace walls. Behind palace walls, allegations inside the royal residences. As the investigation widened, attention turned to Andrew's behavior inside royal properties. Several former staff members, speaking to journalists over the years, described what they believed were coded requests used to bring visitors discreetly into Buckingham Palace. These accounts, never tested in court, suggested that palace spaces were treated as private meeting rooms, shielded from normal oversight. One former employee claimed, "The building's grandeur hid what no one wanted to see." Earlier reporting from locations linked to Jeffrey Epstein in the U.S. had already drawn public scrutiny. Witness accounts referenced massages, social gatherings, and photographs showing Andrew at Epstein's Manhattan residence. While Andrew consistently denied wrongdoing and said he regretted his association with Epstein, these images continued to shape public perception. Among the most widely circulated pieces of evidence remains the photograph of Andrew with Virginia Giuffre, with Ghislaine Maxwell smiling in the background. Andrew stated repeatedly that he had no memory of the encounter, but to many viewers, the image became a symbol of long-standing unanswered questions. Reporting linked to Giuffre's memoir and later investigative features described alleged trafficking routes involving London, including claims that a young woman was flown to the UK and brought into a royal residence. These claims are strongly disputed, but their existence amplified the sense of crisis around the monarchy. Analysts noted how the combination of memoir excerpts, witness statements, and police review created a narrative the palace struggled to contain. Even without legal conclusions, the accumulation of allegations, staff recollections, travel logs, and media investigations cast a harsh light on the royal environment. Commentators said the public was now confronting an uncomfortable possibility: that the monarchy's private spaces, once seen as symbols of tradition, had become part of a story involving some of the world's most troubling networks. As questions deepened, attention turned to the one issue that ignited national anger: whether Andrew was protected by money, influence, or the institution itself. Money, favors, and double standards. How the system shielded Andrew. As the investigation widened, reporters and researchers began piecing together a pattern that critics say revealed years of unusual financial arrangements surrounding Prince Andrew. Journalists highlighted repeatedly that Andrew's finances seemed unstable, with documented assistance from wealthy associates like the Rowland family, and with claims that royal funds were sometimes used to ease private pressures. These reports fueled public anger, with one commentator saying, "The institution bent itself to keep him afloat." Investigations into his connections with Banque Haviland and other financial entities suggested Andrew's royal status opened influential doors. Emails now circulating publicly show discussions about trusts, offshore structures, and wealth protection, all of which critics interpret as attempts to shield personal assets. While none of these communications prove wrongdoing, they intensified scrutiny over whether privileged channels were used to preserve a lifestyle that the public never fully understood. At the same time, old controversies resurfaced involving King Charles III. Reports revealed that between 2011 and 2015, Charles accepted roughly €3 million in cash donations from former Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim. Though regulators cleared the charitable transactions, the optics were damaging, strengthening the argument that royal finances operate under opaque rules unavailable to ordinary public officials. Across television and newspapers, critics began calling this a two-track justice system: harsh for minor civil servants, lenient for powerful royals. The phrase "one rule for them" became a rallying cry as more details emerged. As one former MP stated, if any other official behaved this way, they'd be suspended the next morning. These mounting questions pushed attention back to the palace itself, and what senior royals may have known long before the public did. Cover-up or misjudgment? What the palace knew and did. In the aftermath of Andrew's downfall, journalists returned to a fundamental question. How much did the royal household know over the years, and how did it respond? Reports from insiders suggest that Queen Elizabeth II remained deeply protective of Andrew, approving key decisions like the 2019 Newsnight interview and offering internal support even as public outrage grew. Critics argue this instinct to protect the family may have blinded the institution to the scale of the damage. When King Charles III took the throne, he made moves to distance the monarchy from Andrew, removing duties, stripping titles, and ultimately pushing him out of Royal Lodge. But he did not order an independent inquiry, nor did the palace release internal communications about Andrew's trade envoy years. This allowed allegations of a slow-motion cover-up to take root. One historian claimed, "The palace acted, but always too late, and never with full transparency." Freedom of information. Rejections deepened suspicion. Government departments refused to release Andrew's trade documents, saying some files must stay sealed until 2065. To critics, This looked like coordination between Whitehall and the Crown, a system more invested in protecting reputations than revealing truth. Even police found themselves under scrutiny. Public anger forced the Director of Public Prosecutions to issue a rare statement: "No one is above the law." Analysts saw this as a sign that confidence in institutional neutrality had been shaken. In multiple broadcasts, Andrew Lowney argued that if Charles discouraged investigations, allowed information to remain hidden, or pushed for quiet settlements, then his position could become untenable. The crisis, he warned, was no longer about Andrew alone. It was about the credibility of the Crown itself. And that is what led Lowney, and a growing number of commentators, to voice the unthinkable: that Charles may need to step aside for the monarchy to survive. Why Charles must go. The case for abdication. The demand for change intensifies as commentators link the unfolding crisis not just to Prince Andrew, but to decisions made during the reign of King Charles III. Analysts argue that years of internal protection, limited transparency, and delayed action created a climate where public trust has sharply declined. Royal author Andrew Lowney states that survival now depends on total openness, releasing internal communications, unlocking closed files, and allowing investigators full access to information surrounding Andrew's conduct as trade envoy. His warning echoes across television panels. A monarchy cannot stand on withheld truth. Critics say Charles cannot distance himself from a system that shielded Andrew through some of the most troubling chapters of royal history. At the same time, supporters of Prince William see him as a cleaner slate, a potential starting point for a new era. On social platforms, the phrase "Charles must go" shifts from fringe rhetoric to a mainstream debate about credibility and moral authority. With pressure rising on all sides, the monarchy enters a moment where the question is no longer whether there will be consequences, but who will absorb them. What comes next for the Crown depends on decisions made in the weeks ahead, decisions that could change the institution forever. Crossroads for the Crown. Possible paths from here. The monarchy now stands at a turning point, with analysts outlining three potential futures. One scenario sees King Charles remaining on the throne, but ordering a sweeping independent inquiry, releasing sealed documents, and encouraging palace staff to give evidence without restriction. A move designed to restore confidence in the institution. Another path gaining traction among commentators is abdication, framed as a controlled transition to William and Catherine, whose image of stability and modern leadership offers a contrasting direction from the turmoil surrounding Andrew. A third possibility, far more destabilizing, emerges if the public believes accountability is being avoided. In that case, polls could sharpen in favor of Republican movements in the UK and across Commonwealth nations already questioning ties to the monarchy. Recent discussions in Australia and several Caribbean states cite the scandal as evidence that hereditary power no longer aligns with contemporary expectations. Through every scenario, one idea repeats across broadcasts and op-eds: silence is no longer viable. As one constitutional analyst summarized, either the monarchy evolves in full daylight, or it risks losing the country's patience. This is the crossroads, and every step the palace takes from here will shape the Crown's future. The monarchy now stands exposed, facing questions it can no longer escape. Stay with us. Follow now for every breaking update on this unfolding crisis.